Hi, so today I want to share my TOK presentation. So my real life situation is on November 4th, the day after the election, my French teacher asked me the question, who do I think will win the election? I answered this question by stating, I think Joe Biden will win this election. And I thought this because of the prior experience that I had prior to November 4th, which was phone banking for the Democratic campaign. And so I thought about the people I talked to and how they were mail-in voters. And so I connected how they were mail-in voters to make the prediction that Joe Biden will be the projected winner. And so I came up with the question, to what extent is certainty in predictions increased when evidence is a personal experience? And I came to this question because I wanted to know if the reason I felt that Joe Biden would be the winner is because it was a personal experience with volunteering, and if I wouldn't have had that experience, what if I wouldn't have answered the question in the same way, and if I was looking at the wrong statistics to come to that conclusion. So my first claim is, to what extent is faith based on opinion? So faith is how we trust something is true in the world based on prior experiences we've had with the thing in the external world. My example for this is how we have faith in doctors in how they say that COVID-19 is usually not seen in severe cases with young adults and children. And the problem with this is that people who have experience with COVID-19 and are young take this faith in the doctor and make a false reality within themselves, false connections, that they can make the wrong predictions. So my counter to this is opinion is necessary when creating shared knowledge, because my example is there are patients who are suffering from acute COVID-19 syndrome, which is important for them to share their testimonies and personal opinions of their experience to create predictions, because the whole picture is not yet there, because COVID-19 is a new virus and the data is not fully complete. So my connection back to my question is to have faith and certainty, there needs to be consideration of the whole picture. So my next claim is, to what extent are statistics limited by bias? And my statistics is the collective data that is used to create conclusions. And so my example of this, of how statistics can be biased and how they're limited to this, is how Doug Ducey claims that it is not necessary to close down the state because he feels wearing masks is the factor that will contribute to the mitigation of COVID-19 the most. And so the way that he sees this connection and limits himself to this relationship is an example of like confirmation bias, because he's only paid attention to this data, which will get him to the conclusion that he wants. And so my counter to this is how there needs to be bias, because it may show an important relationship that is more impactful than other factors. And so my example of this is how Dr. Fauci is saying that social distancing is the most important factor to mitigating the spread of COVID-19. And so the way that he sees this relationship, there is need to be bias towards it as being important, because the data is showing that it is a key relationship. And so tying it back to my question, the evidence used to back up a claim should not be connected to a personal experience, because this creates bias. And so my next claim is, to what extent is evidence limited to the internal world of an individual? And I'm thinking of how when data is collected, so when data is collected from an individual, this is actually from the internal mind and not actually always a representation of the external world. So my example for this is, there were polls asking voters in this election who will they vote for. And August 31st, there was a poll on 971 voters which asked them who will they vote for, and majority said they will vote for Joe Biden. However, this data is limited to the internal world, as said, because they could be lying, and there could be actual secret Trump supporters who are silent and don't want to voice their opinion in their mind. And people need to look at this and see that what matters is the actual actions of the people that is in the external world rather than what they say. But this is limited in how surveys and how people respond to them. It doesn't matter if they lie, because it's only data collection, not actual representation of what will happen. So my counter to this is, it is important to have data from the internal mind that represents the external world, when the data always needs to be the same. So my example of this is how there's an issue of bias in the police system, and how there needs to be a representation of what they say, as in they are not racist, and have that be the same as in the external world with their actions. And tying back to my question is, it is important not to mix the reality that is in our mind with the reality that is in the external world. And so in conclusion, looking back at my question, I can see now how I was limiting myself to one correlation, which is mail-in ballots and Democrats, and how this could be confirmation bias in the way I was only paying attention to that factor. And looking back, I was paying attention too much to what they were saying rather than what they were doing, because they were only telling me that they're voting for Joe Biden. However, this could be different from what they did. And I had faith in my ability to see the whole picture and my ability to um, conduct data analysis when I wasn't actually paying attention to the whole picture. Thank you.